Hello. I know it's been a couple of weeks since my last video, so I am posting this one now, obviously. This one is on a topic that I covered a couple of, maybe 3 or 4 videos back, reductionism, and what it really means to you. Reductionism is more of a philosophical idea, like we talked about. If you were to take a clock and you pulled it apart and you looked at the little individual tiny pieces of the gear shifts one at a time, you know, that's basically what reductionism is. It's oversimplifying everything. But I read a book recently based on the work of Raymond Tallis, and I actually picked up this book as a recommendation from Corey Anton. From watching his channel. He didn't personally recommend it to me, but if you are interested in philosophy, especially things like ontology and things like that, Corey Anton is very, very good, and he has his YouTube channel on here. Definitely check that out. Very fascinating type of stuff that the guy talks about. Really, really smart philosophy. So I picked up this book, Aping Mankind. That's what the cover looks like, by Raymond Tallis. And it is about what is termed neuromania and Darwinitis, which are Tallis's terms. And basically, neuromania is the idea that we are our brains, and that is all that human beings consist of. If we have a soul, it exists in the brain. Everything can be defined and reduced easily to coming from somewhere in the brain just by running MRI scans on someone's head while you make them look at pictures of someone that they are deeply in love with. You can find out all of the little spots that activate that you know, code for what it means to be deeply, madly in love with someone. Or you can run an MRI, an fMRI scan on someone, and, you know, show them pictures of somebody that they hate, and it'll code for where hate comes from in our brain and things like that. And that's basically the way that science has been operating as it comes to neurology, and how that relates to a lot of other different sciences. For the last 30 years or so, this has been going on, and it's been much more prevalent recently in the last 10 years or so. You pretty much see any news article that has to do with innovations in the way that we're understanding human beings, having to do with how our brain controls certain functions in our brain. Different parts of our brain control the way that we act and control how we are. And what's fascinating to me about the book is about that in a sense, and how we tend to overgeneralize and oversimplify everything. We reduce it down. We use reductionism in a way that completely goes against anything that we could come at that would give us a real understanding. So if I wanted to find out where true love came from for you, and I showed you a picture of someone that was your true love, and you were hooked up to a machine, and I could see your brain, I could see blood flow moving to certain parts of your brain. I could see, you know, maybe that extra blood flow would mean that there was more activation in those particular areas, but it wouldn't mean that those areas were necessarily inactive before, nor would it mean that other parts of your brain weren't already firing at the same time, different neurons and signal connections and all sorts of other things like that. But what it really would mean was that I'm just looking at something, your reaction to a picture, not your feelings, not your consciousness, not your personality, not how you feel about that person, whether they snubbed you the day before or whether they are someone who you just think can do no wrong, and every time that you even think about them you start tearing up a little bit. Nor does it take into account your feelings about marriage and your feelings about children and your discussions about life together or the things that you've done in the past. It doesn't account for your memory of that person. It doesn't account for all of the different little tiny nuances, whether you feel a lot of lust for that person, whether you feel no lust, whether you have joy in that relationship, whether you're miserable but comfortable. It doesn't account for any of those things. And that is the main limit of neurology and neurological mindset, a reductionist biological mindset, that human beings are just a bunch of parts that are put together for evolutionary purposes. So what it really means to read this book, and I highly recommend that everyone read this book. It can be a little tough in some spots because it's this pretty intense. The doctor himself actually worked in neuroscience for a long amount of time. But the book is about how we view our own humanity and how we have a tendency to take away the things that we cannot explain and try to explain them away as simply as possible. We try to define and rigidly control what unconditional love is. We try to define and rigidly control what fear is, or what life is, or why criminals act the way that they do as opposed to everyone else. And what we're really doing is we're making humanity unimportant. We're making humanity a series of evolutionarily based Darwinitisms. We're becoming a human structure that is completely reactive and is not proactive in the least. We have a fated destiny. And that fated destiny is in our genes, and it's in our brains. And our brains are the same as our minds, and our minds are the same as our personality, and our personality is all based on our biology and what cells fire when and what signals are moving between one part and another in order for human beings to go out and procreate, and that's the only reason we have any of these experiences. And the book argues vehemently against that mindset on all levels, and I completely agree. Human beings are animals in a sense, but we are not simply animals. It's not just that we have an innate intelligence that allows us to shape and mold the world around us. It's that we have a creativity, a depth of creativity that separates us from the rest of the animal world. We are able to change our environment in a way that we are able to step away from and actually look at, okay? So, and appreciate. So let's say, for instance, you might look at a colony of ants and they're moving through this ant farm, and they're doing all of this stuff, and maybe these particular ants, they move in circles a lot, and they end up making these beautiful geometric designs, okay? The ant cannot appreciate the geometric design that it has made. The ant cannot appreciate that it has made art. Not only because the ant is too close to it, all the ant sees is a tunnel, okay? But also because the ant does not have a consciousness. It does not have a sense of separation of self, of oneself and another. It doesn't separate from the environment. Now, we could argue with quantum physics that there's no difference between the observer and the observed, but that is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is it takes a pair of human eyes to see what that ant has done in order for it to be beautifully artistic. Okay? So we can look at another animal and find them incredibly beautiful and gorgeous and just unbelievably amazing, and we can put our own emotions into that animal. People do it with their pets all of the time. We can take them and we can love them, and they can be so nice to us and sweet to us. And they can turn around and claw our face for no reason. They can bite our face for no reason. They can hurt us for what we would think seemingly no reason, especially when we're being nice to them. And the reason why is because animals operate differently than people. They operate differently than people. And people have a consciousness. We have the ability to create continually. And if you look, and this is a point that Corey Anton made in his video, which they bring up in the book as well. If you bring up your hands, look at how much play you have in your hands. Look at all of the digitization that you have, all of the subtle nuances of the musculature in your forearms pulling on the tendons in your hands in such a way that it creates these little tiny micro movements where you can play a sonata, or you can ball your fist up and punch someone in the face. Or you can wield tools and create things out of them. You can be a woodworker and carve beautiful etchings and designs. You can take a hammer and nail nails into wood structures and create buildings for other people to live in. You can do all of these things because you have such dexterous hands with wonderful opposable thumbs. Now, human beings have been creating art for a long time. Homo neanderthalis, Neanderthals, as we usually call them, were some of the first to create music, to create musical instruments and make music. Now, what is this innate structure within us that is fundamentally creative, where everything we can look around and see, someone has either made with their bare hands or has made something like a machinery or something like a movement in order to make something happen. That's the world that humans have created. And if we don't acknowledge that we have a soul or a consciousness which is separate from our biology, then we fall down into the trap of believing that everything we do is only something that is observable specifically for the reason that it increases the chances that we will pass on our genes. Now, I want to ask you, where does compassion come into that? Where does it come in where I, walking alone, may see a homeless man, an old homeless man, and I feel bad and I reach into my pocket and I give him whatever's left in there? Where does that come into the idea that we are just like all other animals? And not only that, where does that come into the idea that the only reason I do that is to make sure that I'm going to procreate? That doesn't even make sense. Okay? The creation of art in and of itself is starting to get a neurological, basis of we only create art to be better and make ourselves feel like we are the king of a certain area, and then other people are going to serve us and we're going to have more success at reproducing. That's such a robotic, over-analytical view of the beauty of humanity. And anyone who's ever created art in any way, shape, or form should be extremely offended by this view that is continually touted in scientific research and the news and everything like that, let alone the fact that that type of research basically boils down to phrenology. That same idea is phrenology, that certain areas of our brain control certain things, and the structures inside of the brain will make us do certain things, and that in and of itself lends itself very heavily to racism. Okay, your genes and the way your brain is this certain way, and so you are coded to acting and behaving a certain way, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're a victim of your brain and your biology. We could say the same thing about someone who goes out and cheats on their wife, for years, maybe 20 years. They cheat on their wife with every woman that moves, and someone with that mindset, with that scientific mindset, would say, "Ooh, I'd love to hook them up to an MRI machine and show them pictures of naked women and see how they think, and show them intermittently pictures of their wife and see how they react to it." That must mean this is the area of our brain that controls whether someone does that or not. Okay, well, since you're already being controlled, since your brain is already a puppet master pulling all of the strings for you, obviously none of these decisions are your own. You are a victim of your own biology. You're a victim of your own want for sexuality, and it's not your fault. You didn't make any of these decisions. Your brain already did it for you, and your brain made the decision 5 to 7 seconds before you even had the stimulus. So your brain already was coded to react. You're automatically reacting. Okay, this view says that human beings have no freedom. We have no freedom, according to the scientific view, which is a neurological Darwinian view, that we are just beings that have structures that do things in order to help us procreate, and that is all. That is all we are. And every single decision that you make is not yours. It's your brains, and it's your cells, and it's everything like that. That's an excellent excuse to do horrible things. That's an excellent excuse. And the more that we take away the beauty and the magic of what it means to be human, what it means to have a consciousness, what it means to have a sense of self and have a sense of the other, in order to take away that sense that we have of not knowing beauty, compassion, love, experiencing it. That sense of our own freedom where we can decide what it is that we want for ourselves. Okay? We can blame all sorts of other things. We can blame the environment that we're around. We can blame the people that we're around. We can blame the situation we were born into. We can blame our genes, okay? We can blame all of those things. But if both of my parents are type 2 diabetics, and I'm born and I am not a diabetic when I'm born, but all of a sudden, within a few years, I become a diabetic because I'm eating the same way that my parents ate and they both became diabetics. At some point, when I have my own autonomy and I can think for myself and I'm not just doing what everyone always tells me to do all of the time, I can decide, as someone with type 2 diabetes, not to eat cake. I don't have to just go along with it and say, I'm diabetic. It's just in my genes. It's just in my biology. There's nothing I can do about it. Look, give me some insulin. All right, good. I'm going to keep eating cake. It's what I'm used to. It's what I like. The decisions that you make are the decisions that you make. When you don't control your mind, when you don't make the decisions, you can easily say that just, I don't know, anything's making these decisions for me. Something's making decisions for me. I don't know. It's not important to me. It's just the way that I do things. It's just the way that I think. It's just the way that I feel. Whatever. This is the same idea that people have when they say that they don't believe in anything spiritual, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in whatever, they just believe in whatever they can see. Now, Tallis himself is an atheist, okay, and he mentions it several times in the book. And, you know, lots of philosophers are. Lots of philosophers, lots of scientists are. They say, well, we don't have any proof that there's God, so it's just, I don't know, there isn't proof that God exists yet. But that's very, very different than someone says, I only believe in what I can see. I only believe in what I can prove. What can you prove? What can you prove? You might be able to prove that if it's raining, you walk outside, you stand out there for an hour, you're going to get wet. You know, you're going to have a wet, your head's going to be wet, your hair's going to be wet. But you may not even be able to prove that. How often do you walk out in the rain and then you're surprised that no drops of water have actually hit you on the head? They're all over your clothes or something like that. You know, and you feel around and no, your hair's completely dry. You know, I mean, that's a gross generalization. It's an overgeneralization. But what I mean is, it's nearly impossible for you to prove anything, especially when we talk about science and the scientific community. Because if we look at the most advanced sciences, like quantum physics and quantum mechanics, within those, scientists that are working in those fields, those extreme physicists, say, pretty much, they're starting to say, most everything is made up of stuff that we can't even see. Most everything is made up of dark matter. Most everything is made up of all of these different things, and we start to get into really complex things like multi-dimensions. You could be existing here and in multiple dimensions across time and space, maybe in infinitum. That is actual science that people are working on right now. It's not science fiction, it's actual science. It's the things that make your microwave possible and your, you know, the little tiny computers in your phone and all sorts of other stuff, okay? So we have to start understanding that we are so much more than we've been told. We're so much more. We're so much more than just some biologically functioning mechanism that has no basis other than to procreate. We're so much more than an animal who's only concerned with eating, sleeping, we're so much more than that. And there are lesser animals that have different behaviors similar to us. They have certain behaviors that are similar. But human beings are the only species that we know of on the planet that can step outside of themselves and are interested in the consciousness of others. If someone has an opinion, I'm interested in what that person's opinion may or may not be. I'm not separate from that. Whereas an animal is interested in themselves only. Animals can mate for life and then just spend time with each other all of the time. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily a lot of love there. There may be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. But with a human being, we are constantly searching for love. We're constantly searching for recognition from others. There's a fundamental difference between human beings and animals. It is a fundamental difference. And we cannot reduce that to a Darwinian perspective of evolution. We can't say people created art because they just felt like getting laid. That's not reality. If you've ever been in love, try to explain it to someone. If it's so simple, if your brain's such a simple mechanism, try to explain what those deep feelings of love are for you to someone else. Good luck. We have vast reservoirs within ourselves, and I'm not saying the brain isn't important. The brain is something that takes in signals and it interprets them, and things like that. But it is not the only factor in what makes us human. It is not the only factor. The fact that our hands are the way they are, the fact that we see things the way they do, the fact we've created the world around us the way that it is, means we have free will. And that free will is what we can use to either make the world better or make the world worse. We are in a unique opportunity where we can create a habitat for animals and make sure that they're safe. The animals don't do that for themselves. They just live, and they go out and they live, and then their habitat gets encroached on by us, and they die, or they freak out, they come into our neighborhoods, and then we end up shooting them because they're walking around our neighborhoods. That's on us, okay? That's on us. It's not on the animals. And the reason it's on us is because we can control those things. We can make an environment to fit. We can make it to fit. We can make it good, and we can make it better. But we can only do that if we get past the idea that we are nothing but biology. We are nothing but a bunch of random analytical signals. We are nothing but an accident of nature that made us so great and creative, that made us able to deeply love one another and connect to each other, that we are an accident. Not only is the research in that area wrong, because there's no way you could have all of those factors come through in something like an MRI. You take a picture of someone. Does that describe to you that person? If you take their picture, does that describe everything you need to know about that person? Probably not. I would venture to say more than likely not. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So what is an entire human personality worth? What is an entire human consciousness worth? We have to get away from these reductionist oversimplifications of what and who and how people are. Human nature is beautiful and different and strong and powerful. We have so much power. But we cannot connect to that power when we're willing to trade it in for fancy claims that stick us in boxes. because we're obsessed with technology at that time. A certain technology that gives us some kind of insight into who we are. It doesn't. It doesn't. Now, the book itself, obviously, this is just me talking about different concepts in the book, but the book itself goes into huge amounts of detail about why these are all false premises, and how humanity is not so easily defined by someone like Richard Dawkins or Dennett. It's not so easily rigidly defined. Humanity is much more complex, much more beautiful, and much more open and free than we give ourselves credit for. And as long as we have that mentality that we are slaves to our brains, we are slaves to our biology, we are slaves to everything around us, we will never be free. You have to let go of that. You have to let go of your perception that you're only doing things because your brain's telling you to. Once you let go of that, you're able to see things in a much more holistic fashion, which makes things make more sense, as was mentioned in one of the previous videos. So again, I could talk about this particular book and this particular subject all day long, but go out, get a copy of this, okay? Aping Mankind by Raymond Tallis. It is the culmination of about 30 years worth of research for this particular, dropped it. Culmination of about 30 years of research for that particular doctor on what it means to be human. And I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's a book I think every single person on the planet, especially these days, with our neuromania and our extreme Darwinitis trying to describe and label everything. It's an extremely good book, and I think everyone should read it. You can also see lectures by Dr. Tallis online here. There's a great one that is Raymond Tallis on consciousness. I think it's about an hour and a half, where he describes a lot of the factors in this particular book. But it's fascinating, really great. And if you want to be more free and you want to be more human, check the book out. Do some research, watch some videos. I think you'll like it. So that's it today. I will probably do another couple of videos. I'm quite a little bit behind. I've been pretty busy lately, which is a good thing. It's always good to be busy, but I have been slacking off in the videos a little bit, so I'm going to put some more on, maybe today, maybe I'll do a couple more today, but regardless, just have a great day, and I look forward to making another one of these soon. Okay, I hope that you enjoy this, and that it makes you think about yourself and the people around you. Alright, bye-bye.